Welcome back once again to another episode of George in the Jungle. I am Aaron Smith, joined as always by the legend himself, George Vogel. We are here to recap your week or so, and we did take last week off. George had some concert tickets he had to put to use last week, but we're gonna recap your week in Cincinnati sports as we always do. But without further ado, George. The Bearcats. I'm doing all right. The Bearcats broke the losing streak. They are no longer defeated in the Big 12, even if it's a win against Houston, a former AAC rival. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's a Big 12 win. We hope this had happened back in September when they were out at BYU, or maybe that home game against Oklahoma, which didn't expect that, but didn't expect a 7-game losing streak either. And thank God that bad boy snapped. And I'll tell you what a difference and just how good they looked pretty much in all phases in this game. Were they dominant?
Mm-hmm.
No. But they certainly were. I never felt like they were out of control in that game. And if you run down and look at some of the stuff they did, first of all, that first drive of the game, methodical. They only faced 1 third down on that drive, 11 plays, 75 yards. They did everything right that drive, and that was a great way to get it started. And took that 7-0 lead. And I'll tell you what, I just thought that helped set the tone, gave them a little confidence, and certainly the defense built on that. And kudos to that defense and to the coaching staff for running those 2 young corners out there to start the game and send a little message. And I think the message was received. I think everyone else kind of picked up their play, and they did a great job. What they hold Houston to through the air was something stupid. It was a low number. I mean, it was just over 102 yards passing in the game for Houston. That's ridiculous in today's college football.
Against a quarterback who was number 2 in conference for passing yards.
Yes. Yeah, and they did a great job against him. And UC, did a great job up front. It was just great to see. Now, is Houston a great team? No. But to go on the road and win, and what a weird game that was, though. I know it said 30-some thousand were in attendance. It sure didn't look like. I know it was a raw night for Houston. Those people don't like to go out in that kind of weather. But it was homecoming, and it's just like – and I talked to some guys who were on the trip on Sunday, and it was like nobody was in those stands. They were shocked. These were, some guys that were there with the team I saw when we were over at Fifth Third Arena for the basketball game, and give it to this football team. I'll say this. We're over there at Fifth Third Arena on Sunday, and those guys probably got back to campus roughly around 3:30 a.m. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, they were in the weight room doing their thing, and they go in shifts. But that first shift was already there, and it included some veterans and some starters, and I was impressed. It's like, man, oh man, they don't stop. I guess they get Monday off. But they were right back at it, man, after, getting off that plane 9-10 hours earlier. So you give them a lot of credit for that. And there was a lot of good to take out of that game. Really was.
Now, we had the week off last week, but we've now seen Emory Jones and Brady Lichtenberg alternating drives early on, especially before somebody seems to settle in. And it's been Emory now 2 games in a row where he's settled in and kind of taking the ropes in the second half. But we have seen some of Brady. We've seen some of Emory. Do you think it's odd the way that they're doing this, or have you even seen this before where you do 2 drives?
I don't know that I have. No. Usually when there's a change, right?
And you've been covering sports for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Usually when there's a change, or you bring the other guy in the second half and let him finish out the game if it's already in hand or if it's out of hand. But you get him some snaps somewhere. But doing it this way. And I got to think back, like if I have seen it's a lot of coaches don't like to do that because they want their starting quarterback to be the man. He's the leader. And I think some guys do that to a fault. They really do. And people who play football at that level tell me I'm crazy. But I think sometimes a guy gets out of bed and it ain't his day. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with having a bad day, and you see it. If you have a guy you trust, you put him in and let him take over, and then the other guy can start the next week. But this that is structured to be like this, no, this is very odd. And maybe I've seen it in some variations where you're running different types of offenses depending on the quarterback, but this is not that. But to Scott Satterfield's credit on this, it seems to be working. He's getting Lichtenberg in some, leverage situations where he gets a good look at him, and the kids look pretty good. At the same time, Emory Jones upped his game at Houston. He had a very, very good game. I mean, you look at his numbers, and he had 13 of 16. 13 of 16 for a guy that we've sat here and ripped all year about not being able to throw the ball. Had the touchdown pass to Ryan Montgomery early on that to cap that first drive. So, no, I haven't seen it, but I understand it, and it's very interesting, and it seems to be working for this team. If you can do that and get out of Houston with a win, it'll be interesting to see how it works against this team coming up, too. Another road game.
The hometown hero, Corey Kiner, had himself a day as well. 23 carries, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns. The team themselves had 204 yards on 48 carries. But Corey himself, he had a day. He had another chance. I think this is the 5th time now. He had another chance for one of those breakaway touchdowns and ends up getting caught. So I'm hopeful that sometime in the offseason he's able to figure out how to switch it into that last gear to completely break away. But all the same, it was a great day for Corey Kiner and much needed for just this team.
He looks great. He looked great in that game. And he sure as heck wasn't used to getting caught in high school. I can tell you that. Nobody got that dude in high school. He's got to be wondering, what is this now? I don't get run down. But I'll tell you what, that second touchdown run he had, that 5-yard, and by then the Houston defense may have been a little wary, but it was a critical point in the game. And that was a man's run. That 5-yard touchdown, somebody hits him, he breaks a tackle, then he's hit with 2 guys. He's got 2 guys at the goal line. He just kept those legs churning and powers into that end zone. That was a man's touchdown run right there. And I was impressed. And I just heard, and it may have been last week, one of the coaches talking about him and his leg strength and stuff. And boy, if you ever doubted it, look at that touchdown run. And that guy, that's where doing all those squats and leg presses and all that pays off. Because that dude, that was, to me, more impressive than that 62-yard gallop he had. That thing, I saw that play. I wind it back. I'm winding it back, looking at it. It's like, damn, son. That was determination and strength and everything else. And he's got really, I think he's got a good balance about him, too. I mean, he really does. He's got a great balance. I think he's got pretty good vision. And I always thought, Michael Warren was a guy I thought like maximized every run he got, every carry. Somehow he had this weird vision where he could find just the littlest crack where he could maximize a run, and what looks like a 1-yard run, he'd get 3. Or if it looked like a 3-yard run, he'd get 6 because of his vision and balance, and he had all that. Corey's getting that. I mean, he's really starting to maximize his runs, and it's fun to watch. And just watching him as that breakaway guy in high school, it's funny to see him grind like he does between the tackles. I mean, it's really something special to see, and I think he's going to be a special player for them. He already is. He's having a year. He's, barring anything unforeseen, he's going to get over 1,000 yards. And it surprised me I think I saw UC's only had like 13 different running backs go over 1,000 yards for the season. It's
Oh,
happened like
wow.
15 times. Yeah, I would have thought, given that stable, I mean, if you start thinking about the running backs they've had, and since I've been around to follow them, you know, they've always had a guy, whether it was Alan Harvin, James Bettis, Reggie Taylor, Al McKinney. You can just keep going. And they've always had like a guy that seemed like, you know, ran for a lot of yards in a given season, and that surprised me that was the stat I saw. Maybe I misread it. I don't know. But that did shock me. But I think he's going to join that club.
You did mention the cornerbacks situation as Kalen Carroll got to start again, and Raekwon Atkins gets to start in place of Jordan Young. Coach mentioned today in his presser that Jordan Young had been doing some things that were undisciplined off the field, so he was disciplined on the field and got message sent, message received. And Jordan Young ended up having himself quite a game as, again, the team just barely gets over 100 yards. And Houston gets over just over 100 yards passing. They also cleaned up the penalties, going 2 penalties for 8 yards total for the game.
Amazing.
But Dante credited the cornerbacks today in the presser, saying that it was the best game that the cornerbacks have had all season. And it allowed the defense to actually open up their playbook and do some things playing with the lead. Chad had the stats on playing with the lead. We had 13 snaps before this game playing with a lead, the entire Big 12 play. And now you get 53 in this game, and you're able to do some things that you just simply weren't able to do because you were always playing from behind.
Yeah, and you're basically playing on eggshells because one big mistake, and you know, that could be the ball game when you're playing from behind like that.
And we saw that happen plenty of times.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And you know, Jordan Young made that great play on that 4th down play, the one they reviewed, which actually I felt like with the kid when he caught the ball and he was running across the field, he almost got to that line, and he may have, but on his own, he comes back to try to avoid the tackle, and Young brings him down. That was a great play. They end up getting 3 interceptions. You know, they start those 2 freshmen and work the other guys back in. And just really the DBs by far their best game. And, you know, they've been talked about a lot in negative ways, but they turned it around this game. And whatever magic they found, I hope they can keep that going because, you know, they're going to face a team this week that doesn't really throw the ball that well. So maybe they don't have to play their best game again. But and you mentioned just 2 penalties. How many times this season, you look at the game before when UC's, I think it was the Central Florida game, and UC gets a big play and it's like they're 1st and goal at the 2 or whatever, and then bang, there's a false start. And now you're 1st and goal at the 7, and it's a whole different dynamic. And they didn't punch that one in. That was a big mistake for them when that happened. And those things have happened all year. You pick the game, you pick the loss, and they've had big penalties that absolutely killed them. And to avoid that bug is awesome. And if they can keep that cleaned up, because quite honestly, the thing I thought would improve a lot this year when Coach Fickle left, and no offense to him, but his team's always had a lot of penalties. I mean,
Sure.
they had a lot of penalties. And, you know, you always wondered, did they play with too much of an edge? And were they getting too many of these personal fouls and things that, you know, should you pull them back a little bit? It's a fine line, and it's tough for coaches to do, I know. But I thought that would get cleaned up immediately, and it didn't. And there were all kinds of crazy penalties this year and these losses that you know, what team can withstand all that? But to have just 2 the entire way, and you know, one of them was a pass interference, but I think it was like a 2-yard penalty because it was down at the goal line. You know, that's going to happen. And then I forget what the other one was, but you know, they only got penalized. What was it? 8 yards in the entire game.
Yep.
That's
Just
a way to win a game.
Just seemed like the things that had been haunting this team, mistakes like when you go for it on 4th down and aren't able to convert there in the red zone, or when you have a guy who gets an interception and you fumble it. That these are the things that didn't end up costing the team the win, where we've seen this team just completely unravel, dismantle all season long on plays like that. But the team showed grit. They showed grit. They showed determination, and they got the job done despite getting in their way a couple times.
On that play, though, I feel bad. I mean, he makes a great
running play. Around with the ball like this, though.
I know. He's wanting a touchdown so badly. He deserves one. He's made so many big plays, and wanting that touchdown so bad. It was funny to hear Corleone talking about that today.
He was yelling. He said he turned around and he's like, I was on the sidelines and turned around like, oh, we got the ball. I'm celebrating.
Yeah, he's celebrating. They told him next time just run straight, and when you're tackled, you're tackled. If you get in, you get in, but don't do that dancing around. And it was also it was good when I was over at the game Sunday, and I got in on this little UCATS thing that Scott Satterfield was there talking, and he talked about how this game, and I don't know this, none of us would know this unless you're in that locker room, but how they felt like this, given all that adversity they've been through, they feel like they're kind of coming out of the fire where the team is really starting to be a team. And if that is true, that's remarkable in a season like this, because 50 guys could go 50 different ways when you lose 7 in a row. And if they are, and there were some other people around the team that felt the same way, I hope that's true. Like I said, you don't know unless you're in that locker room. But he said he felt like during that game, that was the first time he had a whole roster pulling in the same direction, playing for each other, doing all that stuff you want a good team to do. And boy, that's hard to do after you've lost 7 in a row, because that thing can really go off the rails. And look, you look at the way they played. That says something about what those coaches have done here and how they have been able to keep things together. But we'll see. We'll see if that translates to 2 wins in a row. And wouldn't it be nice to just go ahead and make it 3 in a row and get your butt out of that Big 12 cellar, because they're still there, but there's a bunch of teams ahead of them with just 2 wins. If they could end up with 3, they'd be out of that cellar. I know that's not what anyone wants. That's not anything you get a trophy for. But at this point in the season, that's what you play for. That's what you strive for. And you want to just get it going in the right direction and end it the right way. We'll see if they can.
Yeah, West Virginia's been a little bit of a surprise this year. It is their homecoming this week. They are sitting currently at 6-4 compared to UC's 3-7. It is supposed to be 66 degrees on Saturday at game time. Right now, West Virginia is favored 6.5. The over/under at 54.5 in that one. West Virginia coming off a loss themselves, though, as they kind of got the brakes beat off of them by Oklahoma, 59-20.
So they're into a bad Oklahoma team.
Yeah. After
losing at Oak State, the Sooners were a little PO'd, and West Virginia ran into a buzzsaw. And West Virginia is an interesting team. It's a weird team. Like, how in the hell? So they're balanced, like UC, but 213 yards a game on the ground, 196 yards a game through the air is what they're averaging. So they're not an offensive juggernaut. However, they do run the ball really well. They're I don't know what UC is running the ball per game, but I think they're a little better than what
number 5.
Yeah, 5 in the nation.
5 in the country.
I think West Virginia's top 10 in the country too. And it's weird. They got this big running back too. This kid, C.J. Donaldson, 6'1", 238. I mean, you're talking a load right there. And I don't know that he breaks any long ones, but God, he pounds it. Scored a touchdown in 8 straight games. It would be nice for UC to break that streak. We'll see. It's funny. I was looking at some notes today, and the last meeting between these two, 2011, when they were both still in the Big East down at Paul Brown Stadium, I remember being at that game, and I remember Geno Smith on the sidelines, and he's listed at 6'3" or something. I'm telling you what, that dude looked like one of the biggest quarterbacks I'd ever stood near. I saw it, and he had a great year that year. And I think were they off for the Big 12 after that? I think they may have been. I think that's why you didn't play him. That may have been their last year in the Big East because they kind of bolted, I think, a year early. And Geno Smith though was the quarterback then, and then it's funny. I mean they had a pretty good team, and UC could have won that game, or certainly could have tied it at the end. They had a field goal blocked that would have tied it up on the final play, but UC lost that 24-21. Yeah, West Virginia went to the Big 12 the next season. So West Virginia has a huge, this is all history, and it doesn't matter in this game coming up, but they have a huge advantage in this series overall. It must be really bad because I didn't write it down. But I certainly expect, I really think we're going to see a hell of a game on Saturday. I really do.
I'm looking forward to it, and I think that the matchup plays into Cincinnati's favor as this defensive line is built to stop the run.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But West Virginia, I've been high on West Virginia all season long. As anybody who watches our nightcaps know, this is not going to be a surprise to me if West Virginia comes out strong right out of the gate.
Well, yeah. I mean, they beat UCF the week before. They've got 4 Big 12 wins. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. I'm probably a little more hopeful just based on recent history for UC as far as what I saw Saturday. We'll see if they can keep that up.
In fairness,
to see them bust out and finish strong.
In fairness, their wins are against BYU, TCU, UCF, not in that order, and Texas Tech. So their wins are not impressive wins. We'll say that.
They buried BYU though, right? Didn't they hammer them pretty good, I think?
37-7, yeah.
Yeah, I was watching that game, and that got ugly. That got ugly. But
and they did lose to Houston 41-39.
That was interesting. Yeah, they did. I saw that on there. I was looking at those.
That was on the Hail Mary, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. That should have been a W for the Mountaineers for sure.
So
you got to wonder, I wonder what, Coach Brown down there, I wonder what kind of heat he's feeling if he is.
Well, if you lose to Cincinnati, all of a sudden the heat that was at the beginning of the season is probably right back where you were despite winning 6 games this season. So,
well, if his name were Jimbo Fisher, he wouldn't care if he got fired or not. He'd be wouldn't care if he $75 million.
He wouldn't care if the boosters wouldn't care if he won or not. They fired Jimbo after a win, after a 40-point win.
It's the nuttiest thing. I mean, no one's seen anything like this. First of all, 2 years ago, they extend that contract back to 10 years. 2 years ago, because they thought he might leave for LSU.
Yeah.
And now 2 years later, you're giving him $75 million to walk away. Now, I don't know how that AD stays in that position because he was there when this extension happened. If I'm the Board of Regents, it would have been AD first. $75 million would have stuck around a little longer than that AD that made that contract.
Also consider that his staff was just extended this season.
And some of them have buyouts.
If I'm not mistaken, and that was only a month or two ago, so I'm sure there's buyouts worked into some of those things.
What is that athletic director doing, and how does he survive this?
I can't answer that. That's above.
That guy punted out the door long before Jimbo. I'm serious. I mean, how do you extend the guy 2 years ago and 2 years later? I don't care how much money you have to piss away. That is poor management. That's a guy. That's got to be the worst athletic director in the history of athletic directors. And UC had one time that stayed 19 days. So that's pretty bad.
I'll see your worst athletic director, and I'll raise you Arizona, who has $240 million missing.
Yeah, you got a point there. At least we know Jimbo walked out with the 70.
Right. He may have robbed the Brinks truck, but we know where that money went.
We know where it went. That's right.
Arizona's debating on selling the athletics program when I don't even know what that means. What does that even mean?
They got to hang on until they get that Big 12 money, I guess. But even that's not going to offset that.
How do you sell an athletics program from your university? Where does it go?
I don't know. I don't know. There's a billionaire out there that's like, hey, I want to play with an athletic department. It'd be kind of nice if that happened. But then you're the NFL, right?
Look, stranger things have happened this year. So,
it's been so strange since this whole transfer, NIL, all that. And we can get into that with the basketball team. I mean, my God.
Well,
what's going on there is crazy.
Let's switch gears anyway. The Cincinnati Bearcats men's basketball team starts this young season 3-0. Most recently getting a win over, what was that one? That was Eastern Washington.
Yep.
And they won that one handily, as they have all their games at this season or at this point already. 85-73, your final. Still playing, obviously, without Jamil Reynolds and Aziz Bandiago. But you've had 3 games to digest. I'm assuming that you've watched all 3 of these games.
Attended all 3.
I was going to say, I know you
enjoyed it. And
you were in the President's Club, right?
That was a weird thing, is I had the Bengals game on Sunday, and then this game's on, and I want to go see the game live, so I got to record the Bengals, and then you know how that is. And actually, I came home and I watched the whole thing, play after play after play. But I saw them. I will say this just off the blush after the first 3 games. And while you say they won handily, I was a little worried at that first game. I mean, they couldn't shake Eastern Washington.
It got down to 5 in the second half.
Yeah, it got a little hairy, but still, looking at this team, there's a lot to like about it. Yeah, there's some things, and you worry about what it's going to be when you get in the Big 12. They got a month to figure some things out. We'll see what happens with these waivers. I mean, Wes went on for several minutes today again about how he feels, how this process has gone. We'll see if they go the legal route. It looks like that's already happening, and there's going to be and I would say, I don't know, I give it a fair shot that one, if not both of those guys, I think Aziz has the better chance to be eligible. Apparently UC feels very strongly about the case. And, this goes back to the NCAA and just throwing this crap out there with no hard and fast rules. And it's like, well, you can't transfer twice unless you get a waiver. Well, what the hell does that mean? Like, why would you get a waiver and why wouldn't you get a waiver? And why have waivers? It's mind-boggling what they do. And to me, both kids had their coaches leave. One was fired. The other one out at Utah Valley, left for Cal.
Right.
Other kids transfer out. You're sitting there trapped. And Bandago, I feel really bad about because he's out there in the middle of Utah. His family, his American family's back in Ohio near Akron. And he wants to get somewhere closer to home and play a higher level of basketball. Mm-hmm. And I can't fault him for any of that. And if the coach doesn't leave, okay, then he doesn't really have a case. But if these coaches can just up and leave willy-nilly, I just feel like these kids should have a chance, because as much as we want to say these kids commit to the university and this, and they should commit to the university, well, they commit to the coaches. That's who they're comfortable with. That's their father figure. That's their mentor. That's their guy. And
comfort blanket. Yeah.
That guy creates. That's why you're going there. You either like them. If you don't, you go somewhere else. I've never known a kid go to university but hated the coach. Never.
That wouldn't
That
make
doesn't
any
happen.
sense.
No, it doesn't happen. So there's so many factors that weigh in what I feel like would be UC's favor. And look, I don't think I think 2-time transfers, you got to cap it. You can't just, but if your coach leaves or is fired, I mean, you're asking a kid to stick around for, the mystery guest and play for him and hope you hit it off with him. And, if some big jerk walks in, you're supposed to just suck it up and enjoy the college experience. And you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, and I get it. These kids are on scholarship and all this. They do have some responsibility. And I'm a big personal responsibility guy, but that your kids, the university plays into it, the city plays into it, but the biggest draw is that coach and that culture and that staff is why those kids go to these places. And when they up and leave, what's this poor kid supposed to do who's from Senegal and most of the people he knows lives in the Midwest and he's out at Utah Valley?
And the most frustrating thing about all of this is the NCAA playing judge and jury, as they apparently sent back a message saying, why Cincinnati? This doesn't make sense to us. Well, fortunately,
right. Would it have been okay if it was Ohio State because that's closer to Akron, or would it have been okay if it was, name a college up there, like
Cal following his coach, or
right.
But it's not.
He probably would have had a better chance if he had gone to Cal, but he didn't want to go that far.
It's not up to you to decide where is an appropriate place for this kid to play.
Yeah, I know. I agree. That's because when the kid's going through that, the coach up and leaves, and I know, I don't know. I think UC is going to end up winning this thing.
Well, yeah, because when it comes down to mental wellness, and he's cleared through the mental wellness, and he's checked all the boxes at the behest of the doctors, at the behest of the coaches, at the behest of lawyers who have looked into all of this for the student athlete, because this is probably far too much for them to even understand. They're getting all of the advice that this is free and clear, you're good, and then still being told, nah, we don't understand why you'd go to Cincinnati.
Right. And I would love to know what those boxes are. So they said there were 7 criteria. And before they transferred, according to what Wes has said, and I believe him, they went down the whole list. Yep. Before they transferred, because they wanted to play this year. And so they do what they're told to do and transfer and figure it'll be okay, and it's not okay. On the flip side, the poor coaching staff, and maybe maybe you don't roll the dice on both of them, but I don't think they felt like it was that big of a roll of the dice. And I think they felt pretty damn confident that at least one of those kids, if not both, were going to get those waivers. And now, the waivers go by the wayside. It's a tough situation. It's weird, and it's also new because the NCAA has never done this crap, and they just rolled out all this stuff with no rules. It was like NIL was wild, wild west. Transferring was wild, wild west. And there's no rules. And for you to roll that out and not have these rules, and they roll it out because they knew they were going to get their ass beat in court. So they're just like,
and they're already changing it for next year too, by the way.
Right. Exactly. And it's just like, good Lord. Who's running this show?
Let's get into the X's and O's though of what you've seen. Who's impressed you so far, George?
Well, Day Thomas has been phenomenal. I mean, as advertised. And I'll tell you what, for a freshman, Jizzle James ain't far behind, because I love the way these guys press the ball. They get the ball and it's boom down the court. And if there's somebody to get it to, or they can make a play, they do it. There's no hesitation. It is fun basketball to watch. I mean, they push the pace, and I hope that doesn't stop. I really hope that doesn't stop. Those two jumped out at me, but then they're controlling the action most of the time. And Jizzle got lost. I mean, that first game, probably in the first half, he got lost 4 times defensively. But he's got so much talent. He's going to get there. Part of it was he was trying to help a little too much, and lost his guy, or gave up too much of an area, and his guy took advantage. But he's figuring that out quickly.
On the fly, yeah.
His defense is coming around, and he's a heady player. He really is. John Newman, for God's sakes, he has looked phenomenal.
One dunk per game so far.
Bombing threes, explosive at the rim.
Mm-hmm.
He is just an absolute – he is a grinder, plays hard every second he's out there. I've got them all written down. The game last who was it? It's a game they blew out, Detroit Mercy. CJ Frederick was just an assassin. I mean, he was open and just stroking it, and it was over. He got held to a goose egg on Sunday, but I think Eastern Washington kind of took him out of the game early. But I love UC having a shooter like that. That is, he's an assassin out there. If he's got a look, and he does everything well. That's the other thing. He is like, his basketball IQ and knowledge and feel. And actually, I could say that about all the guys I just met. I mean, that's the other thing. We spent a lot of years, and you could even say this complaint with Bob Huggins to a degree. Now, he turned these guys that could jump out of the gym and strong and all this into basketball players. These guys are basketball players. They know how to play the game. They are ready-made. Skillings, some good, more good than bad. Got to finish a little better, but he's looking good. Lukosius at times, the first game he wasn't so good, but he's going to be fine. That kid's got game, and he's another one that has pretty good feel. And I think some of these guys were pressing too much in that first game against Illinois Chicago. I thought they looked a lot better. Obviously, the blowout, everybody looked good. But even Sunday, these guys I'm talking, and Locken Sunday was unbelievable. Now, their big guy was a freshman. Victor's got some experience, and Victor played a hell of a game, and he played within himself. And when he was draining threes, the place went nuts. Not a lot of people there Sunday, understandably so, but the people who were there enjoyed that Victor show. And, Josh Reed had all those rebounds in that game, but there's other things. He's getting there. He's getting there. I just hope he takes a little bigger step than what I've seen so far. He's got to be able to knock down that shot outside. I know they say in practice he does. I want to see it in games.
Yeah, I think those are all fair assessments. A name that you hadn't really mentioned, Odie. I thought Odie's presence, he doesn't look so hesitant. It looks like he's willing to fill in whatever gaps they need him to fill in.
Played much better around the rim the last two games.
Yep. So I think that was the only name you really didn't mention.
Yeah, no, I ran down. Yeah, exactly.
Out of the whole roster.
I thought CJ Anthony looked good Friday night. Yeah. But yeah, I did. But yeah, I think I don't know. I think they're they want to get better rim protection, and that was really a problem. I mean, that Illinois Chicago game was a layup line. It really was for Illinois Chicago. I mean, they got way too many layups, too many. And some of it was what I was talking about, where these guys were getting lost on defense. And you could tell it was game one. And you sit there and you think, well, what the hell have they been doing in practice? Well, teams come out and run different things and do different things. They got to quit getting beat on backdoor cuts, too. That happened a couple times Sunday. And that drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. Detroit Mercy, that game was a mismatch, but at least they got tested a little bit Sunday and kind of had to dig down a little bit. And Eastern Washington, for what they are, they're no joke. They may win that conference this year.
One of the points that I brought up, I think last night on our show, just kind of curious to get your thoughts on it. I think this team actually has depth to where if a guy like Simas or a guy like Vic doesn't have a great game, they have guys who can step up, and they're really starting to build confidence in the fact that everyone's shooting. And I think even CJ Frederick having a night where he only has 2 shots on Sunday I don't think that's anything that's going to live with these guys. They're not worried about the fact like they've had success already, and they're just going to be like, all right, well, that was just a game.
Love the way they share the ball. There's no, I love the way they share the ball. What you pointed out with CJ not scoring Sunday.
Mute your TV, Chad.
Champions Classic starting. Sorry.
Oh,
George.
who won?
Ole Miss. Duke.
Duke. Okay.
Ole Miss is playing Detroit Mercy tonight at Ole Miss. Guess the score with 3 minutes left.
Ole Miss 90, Detroit Mercy 72.
Ole Miss 64, Detroit Mercy 63.
I'm rooting for the Titans. Come on,
So,
Titans.
I mean,
I know. They buried that team. Now they buried
they
it.
did. They beat the hell out of them, but they might not be terrible.
I thought it was a mismatch, but UC jumped them right out of the gate. CJ Frederick couldn't miss.
Right.
And nobody could miss from three early in that game. That was a clinic. And you're right. Maybe they're not that bad. I thought they might be bad. They lost their guy last year, right? Davis, his son.
Well, sometimes when a guy that shoots that much moves
Yes.
on, you might get a little better.
I loved when at Fifth Third Arena too, they showed that shot by DeJulius right before the half, and then he walked up to talk to him. Do you remember that?
I do.
Last year?
I believe so. Yeah, it was one of the two. I don't know.
It was recently, but DeJulius made that shot at the half. And he kind of barked it. That was a great matchup that night. Those two. That was a lot of fun. But I hope you're right.
George, I think it was last year because we joked the guy that had more fun than he's ever had in his life was CJ Anthony leading up to that game, getting to be Davis.
So he got to shoot and practice all the
ultimate green light. Like
That's
just
great.
He's going to shoot from everywhere.
That's what Davis did. It didn't matter if he had an off night or not. He just fired.
Right. So if the guy that was playing him on the scout team, like, guess what? Just got to shoot.
That's what you got to do. Right. That's fantastic. Well, I hope you're right. I hope they're better than I give them credit for. But UC really was hitting on all cylinders in that game.
Well, they beat the hell out of them. I'm not denying that. I'm saying, in
the first half they did. The second half, and
the second half was close.
That's how those games go. But my God, when you score 60 in the first half, don't you kind of have to get to 100?
You would like it. It would be optimal.
I wanted 100, but then again, I get it. And they could have gone for it at the end, but UC dribbled it out. But that's okay. That's fine.
So their next game is against the Norse of NKU on Sunday.
Boy.
So
UC fans want blood.
I don't think there will be any
OOD.
There won't be any urns involved in this game or anything like that. But I think we need to it should be.
Isn't that what they should play for? Like a golden urn?
A golden urn.
That's the rivalry trophy?
I'll tell you, that was a low point last year when that happened. That was a low point.
So, we'll be all eyes should be on that game on Sunday, as there is no Bengals game on Sunday.
2 o'clock start, Fifth Third Arena.
There you go.
I interested to see how UC comes out and plays because, there are still plenty of guys left from that team last year. There's a lot of new blood, obviously, but I would think, the head coach was certainly there last year, and he's going to know.
He was.
And you can't take these. I mean, NKU is a good Horizon League team, and the Horizon League plays damn good basketball. There's actually, I sit here and say how UC is, the fans want blood and all that, but and they shouldn't have lost to NKU last year. It was such an ugly game and shouldn't have lost in the fashion they did. However, that happens in basketball, and NKU is more than respectable. That's a good program with a damn good coach who knows what the heck he's doing. And I don't know if he has quite the overall talent that he had last year, but I guarantee you this: when it comes Horizon League tournament time, they're going to be ready to go. They always are.
They did play at Washington in their second game of the year, and they only lost that game by 8, a final of 75-67 in favor of the Huskies. And their lone win this season does come in their last game, 85-68 to DePaul, hosting DePaul. So ESPN's FPI gives them a 12% chance, 12.3% chance to win this game. NKU, that is, not UC.
No, that to win at Fifth Third, that would be that would surprise me. But last year surprised me over at, what is it now? It used to be Bank of Kentucky, but it's something else now, right? Center.
I live in Athens. I couldn't tell you.
I only went over there all the time. I still go there. It was Bank of Kentucky stuff, but it may have changed. Truist Arena, is that what it is now?
Sure.
I think it's Truist.
You'd have a better idea than I.
Oh, I should know.
Truist Arena.
Yay. It was Bank of Kentucky, though, at one time, right?
Yes.
Yay.
There we go. The Bengals played on Sunday.
We've been putting this off.
Completely switching gears.
You've been putting this off.
We have been putting this off a little bit. They lose to CJ Stroud, who's on fire right now, and the Houston Texans. Not a pretty game. You're missing T. Higgins. You're missing Sam Hubbard. Trey Hendrickson has to leave after he gets rolled up on well after the play is over in a just weird
At least that
play.
was at the end of the game.
Correct.
At least that was at the bitter end.
But Houston wins by a field goal, 30-27.
The Bengals got their butts kicked in the trenches, basically.
It was everything they did was weird. They're still not running the ball. They just simply refuse to run the ball, whether they have a lead, whether they don't have a lead.
All rushing yards in that game, right?
Yeah. I mean,
188-66.
What we've been what we've been talking about all season, though. All season.
44 yards of offense. But yes, the Bengals did not. I mean, what they have, I'm going to guess it was under 20 running plays and 40 some passing plays, 40.
16 run plays, 40 passing plays.
Okay, I knew it was somewhere in that neighborhood. You allow 4 sacks. Burrow was hit 9 times. You would think you would find a way to slow that down. And I'll tell you, this is how weird I am. During that UC game on Saturday night, they're talking about the guy who set the record for most passing or most yards from scrimmage in an NCAA game. And they said he's a pretty good quarterback in the NFL right now, and he played at Texas Tech. So it's Patrick Mahomes. I looked up the game. In that game, Joe Mixon played for Oklahoma. He had like 250 yards rushing and like another 160 through the air. So the guy can be used for screens and things to slow down pass rushes. And I don't know why I don't know why that doesn't happen.
2 catches, -1 yards for
having one of his better years when you look at each play. I mean, he had a run the other day where he kind of got hit at the line of behind the line of scrimmage and hopped over that guy on one leg and kept his back. I don't know how he did it. I don't know. He's a pro athlete, and that proves it right there. An elite athlete. That run, and he ended up getting like 8 or 9 yards on that run. It was a terrific run, and he was dead to rights in the backfield. And I know they get behind the stick sometimes, and you can't run it, but I don't think that's always the case. And I know there were some things that happened, the curious call, and Joe Burrow took the blame for this, when he called the quarterback draw, and he saw a look that he swore was there. And I trust him. He can figure this crap out a hell of a lot quicker than I could ever think about.
Sure.
And boy, it got stuffed. But that tells me right there, if he saw the look and thought, this is it, and it was like second and it was more than 10 because there had been a loss of yards on the previous play. But he's like, it's there. And then he gets stuffed. Something was going on up front that just wasn't right. And I don't know what it is because I believe in this offensive line, but you got to start doing it on Sundays, and they better do it on Thursdays coming up. But, yeah, and it wasn't just the offensive line. I mean, the defensive line giving up 150 yards to Devin Singletary, 188 yards, in the game. It was a weird game for the Bengals. I read an article, Paul Dehner of The Athletic, and he's right. These cracks, giving up those long plays on defense, that's been there most of the season. Now, it wasn't there, when they won a couple in a row, seemed like they had it going. But in those losses, and I think Houston, I don't know how many plays they had more than 20 yards, but it was a boatload. You can't give up those explosive plays and win games. And the Bengals gave up a lot of explosive plays. I mean, Noah Brown, for God's sakes, had 170-some yards receiving.
I read a crazy stat today, and let me see if I can find it real quick. I believe that game, he's played in the league for 6 years, and that game he's been in the NFL for 6 seasons. 11.6% of his total career receiving yards came from Sunday's matchup with the Bengals.
That's insane.
Yes. That I do want to credit that comes
from
a
big game too. He's had 2 big weeks in a row.
That stat comes from Evan McPhillips on Twitter at EMCPHIL. Do want to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, and that's a crazy stat.
Absolutely
and
insane.
I wonder, because the week before he had 100+ yards receiving, I wonder what the total of the last 2 weeks is, what chunk that is of his career yards. It's got to be a lot. Now, he's been injured, had some things like that slowed him down, but man, oh man, you look at C.J. Stroud and the dudes he has with him at Houston that he's familiar with Brown and the tight end. It's like, Jesus.
SMU's Tank Dell. We're all too familiar with Tank Dell as Bearcats fans.
Yeah,
he was at SMU last season. So they're getting it done. Unfortunately, it came at a time that the Bengals really can't afford to lose many more games.
The Bengals would lose that game, though. I really didn't going into it. Now, was I as confident as I was against Buffalo? No, I wasn't. Don't ask me why, because Buffalo's just they're not.
Mute your TV.
I'm watching a damn game. Tank Dell went to Houston.
Sorry.
Yes,
not
that
SMU.
is correct.
Thank you.
The ombudsman speaks.
Goodness.
We have an ombudsman here.
But in any case, they can't with no wins currently in their own division and another conference loss. It's not
That's
good.
They're 4-0 in the NFC. They're 1 and whatever, and yet they've got the 1 win over Buffalo. So now they win Thursday night. You're right back in the division race, but you got to win this division. Otherwise, I can almost guarantee they're going to be on the road in the first week of the playoffs, and they will not have.
If you make the playoffs,
if they make the playoffs, right? I know, but let's
Playoffs.
One of the greatest things ever. That was Jim Moore.
So I don't know what. Obviously, you saw. I'm sure you saw today where Zach Taylor came out and said that he got in his own way with his play calling. He went back and watched tape, wasn't happy with his own play calling. You've talked about the offensive line play. it's been dreadful. I was looking for it while you were talking. I can't find the actual ratings, but I think there was only one guy above 64. I think everybody else was 64 or less on PFF
right?
on PFF grades, and that's not good.
No, that's brutal. That's brutal. And we talk about all those things. What everyone talk about right after the game? Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd dropped the ball in the end.
It wasn't a good pass.
Well, he could have caught it.
He should have caught it. Don't get me wrong, but it was behind him where you're coming back over your body. Joe was off.
But those are unusual. I mean, Tyler Boyd has not done that before. He's not going to do it again, probably. He did drop the ball on it was like a 2nd and 7 in the third quarter, and he may have run a while on this one, and maybe that's why he didn't catch it. But again, those are unusual plays for Tyler Boyd. He has been, and thank God Joe Burrow said it after the game, they wouldn't have been down there in position if it wasn't for Tyler Boyd on the play where he didn't catch it. They wouldn't have been down in the red zone if he hadn't done what he had done. But I was a little – I get that pass, people felt he should have caught it. But he is not even close. When you give up 544 yards, some wide receiver is not the GOAT. I'm sorry.
No, and they had talked about even some of the defense. They were playing majority early on and even all the way through until I believe the third quarter, late into the third quarter even. They were playing cover. They were playing zone, and they switched up to man late in the game, and that's when they stopped giving up big plays. Cam Taylor-Britt talked about it either today or yesterday or Sunday after the game. I can't remember when that interview was, but he said that's when they were able to finally start stopping this. When you're actually going head to head against these guys is when they were able to start shutting them down a little bit better than they were earlier in the game. But yeah, 504. Lou, I'm not going to question anything Lou does, truthfully, but I'm gonna say that it sounds like the Texans looked at this game, circled this game, said we're going to switch things up and we're going to do things differently than we've put on tape all year. Because I can't imagine that for both Lou giving up 544 yards is unheard of, and for Zach never calls himself out on play calling as much as he probably should, and for him to actually admit and carry the water on this one, saying I called a bad game, that doesn't happen.
I'll tell you who's more upset than anyone is the team that needed a quarterback and didn't draft C.J. Stroud. I mean, seriously, that kid's having himself a rookie season, and now I'm seeing. We'll see what he does from here out. I'm starting to see these little MVP things for him, and that's interesting.
It's about damn time Ohio State, as many things as they can brag about, finally has a quarterback worth a shit.
Yeah, I should know who their last good one was.
People are still trying to say Justin Fields. I'm not going to say that he was a good quarterback.
No, he's a hell of a player, but he just hasn't gotten it done. Joe Germain.
Art Schlichter.
Art Schlichter. I was going to bring him up next. He should have been if he hadn't been distracted. Thank God he didn't have a phone back then. He'd been on that making bets the whole time.
And
back then, at least you had to find a landline to call a bookie.
I think Joe did clarify it this week that he went to school at Ohio State. He played football for LSU. So for all those Ohio State fans trying to claim him, not anymore.
Well,
that said, they got this game against the Ravens coming up. The Ravens are going to put up a hell of a fight. The Ravens still at the top of the division, even after the loss to Cleveland this past week. They're sitting at 7-3. Pittsburgh somehow, some way, unbeknownst to me, and because they're
my preseason pick to be a surprise.
They're not good. They're not good.
They're winning.
They threw a fumble that wasn't called a fumble, George. It went behind the line of scrimmage. It went backwards, and it
You want me to
reviewed.
go back through the history of the Steelers and the breaks?
No, because it makes me want to
It's
throw
the
up.
Steelers. Things happen. You can't explain them. There's nothing in the universe that can explain the things that go Pittsburgh's way. When it comes to
You could explain it, but then people tell you to put your tinfoil hat on. and
Can
all
you
that.
explain the game the Bengals lost, the playoff game in 2015?
I mean, I could explain it, but people again call you crazy, and that's not the way it played.
How in the world are you leading that game and you're putting the game away on the ground and there's a fumble, they get it, Big Ben comes in with a bad shoulder and he's barely able to heave the ball, and somehow they get down there, and then the Bengals have those penalties, and it just, come on.
Well, we won't.
It's like the Bermuda Triangle of the NFL.
That's a
Cleveland, Cincinnati, and all the positive flow goes to Pittsburgh.
That's a conversation for another day. But Cleveland sitting at 6-3 as well, and the Bengals still in the basement at 5-4. This shit's wild.
It's wild. Hey, so Trey Hendrickson, he did practice tonight a little bit. They said limited. Now, other people said he did everything everybody did. The Bengals considered him limited. Higgins didn't practice. Hubbard didn't practice. Those guys probably.
Yoshi didn't practice.
Shot. What's that?
Yoshi didn't practice.
Yoshi did not practice either. Which, with Higgins out, that's kind of a big deal.
Not great.
But the Ravens, I always say history means nothing. They're 6-0 at home in Thursday night games. So that tells me they're due to lose one.
The Bengals are also, I believe I saw the stat in the last, I think it was 10 years. The Bengals are 0-13 in away games on prime time.
Really? Because overall,
not great.
They're 10-7 in Thursday night games, but I don't know about the road. I could probably sit here and tell you I've been to probably damn near every one of those road prime time games.
It was Jay Morrison. He said 0 for their last 14, and I think 1 for 16
on the road in prime time.
On the road in prime time.
Thank you. I'm glad you saw that too.
I suffered through so many of those, doing like post game shows on the field and all that. In fact, I used to have fans beg me not to go to games, but it's like, I gotta go. They're sending me. I gotta go, and they're like, "We're losing. It's the Vogel curse."
We'll find out what happens. I know we're eclipsing that 1 hour mark
here.
But right now the spread on that game on Thursday stands
3.5 or 4, maybe.
It's currently at, where's it at? 3.5. You are correct. And
stupid if I take the Bengals and the points.
The over-under 46.5. Game time weather 53 and cloudy. So we'll see.
The Ravens do have the top scoring defense in the NFL. I think they're number 2 in total defense.
Their defense is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I want to say that Marlon Humphreys is also dinged up. So.
Yes, I don't think he's going to play. But are the Ravens going to lose 2 in a row at home in back-to-back weeks? They did it
to 2 division opponents.
I know. I mean, I looked this up, and they have lost back-to-back home games. And actually, not last year, maybe the year before, they ended the season with back-to-back home losses, I believe. So it's not like Baltimore's a black hole and you go in there and you're definitely going to lose. So, but I all things being equal, and I know in the division race, it's nice to tighten it up that they lost to Cleveland, but I think it would have done the Bengals a little bit of a favor if they'd won that game and not be laying for Cincinnati come Thursday night, because that's got to be
a good
Ravens team. The way they lost that game and got out to a big lead, they got to be PO'd. But the Bengals should be PO'd too.
So FCC, they won their series.
Yeah, they
move on.
Series. They're heading on to the conference semifinals. They play Saturday, November 25th, hosting Philly at TQL Stadium.
Such a long break.
It's a long break. It's crazy. And Matt Miazga is the Defensive Player of the Year in MLS. That just came out, so that's good. And
Also in trouble.
football.
He's also in trouble for going into the referees'
Yeah.
quarters as well, right?
Woo! I'll tell you what, there's some drama in soccer sometimes. I mean,
Man.
it really is. And that's some drama. And he always seemed like, I don't know, I wouldn't say mild mannered, but that's funny. What else we got? Oh, high school football. You got state semifinal in Indiana. East Central's playing, and then you got the quarterfinals in Kentucky and Ohio this week, which is called the regional finals. But for all intents and purposes, it's the final 8 in the state in each division. Moeller and Lakota West is the big one in Division One. So yeah, there's still a lot happening, and we still got a lot to talk about, which is beautiful, and a lot to watch, which is even better.
Fair enough. Well, we will do this all over again next Tuesday. Another fun show with you, though, as we talked everything going on. Hopefully there's no more concert tickets coming up here anytime soon.
I feel like I was at a concert today. I went to the Cyclones game, and it was a matinee. And what they do at these matinees, they face off at 10:30, and it's school kids. It's a field trip for all these school kids. I mean, kids there's 7,000 kids,
That
and
sounds
this little
dreadful.
coot goes in there, and they are screaming at everything. All the announcer had to say was, "Good morning." Like, I mean, screaming elementary and junior high kids.
$2 beers, right?
From start to finish. Not today. I stayed away from the beer this morning, but the next game I go to, it'll be $2 beers, and I'm all in. They got to be really cold, though, because of what they serve.
And because of how comfortable those seats are there at that arena.
Oh, they got some new ones where I was. They were nice.
There you go.
I was impressed.
Don't know what to say.
But God, it was loud.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. That was another episode of George in the Jungle. For my host, George Vogel, I'm Aaron Smith. We will see you here next Tuesday night at 9:00 p.m. to discuss your city and their sports.
See you then.